your targets. Of the following suggestions, which one would be the most appropriate to target first? All right, always remember our rule when we're picking out targets. We always want to pick the most meaningful, socially valid targets we can. Now, as analysts, we might work on several different things at once, and we also want to adhere to what the client and the stakeholders want to work on. But our priority remains socially valid, meaningful behaviors. In this case, which of these targets is going to be most appropriate? Again, when we say most appropriate, what do we mean? We mean socially valid, we mean meaningful. We're looking for pivotal behaviors, behavioral cusps, things that are going to open up the world to our clients. Let's look at A, independently picking out clothes for the day. All right, independence is good. Independently picking out clothes is great. That's going to lead them to being able to do things like dress themselves, live on their own, etc. So A is pretty good. What is our rule? Our rule is we always read all of our answer choices. One, we're looking for the best answer. On the BCBA exam, the most common feedback I get is that going through the questions, every question I thought 2 answers could be correct. And that's how they designed the exam, okay? So you're always picking the best answer. 2, we want to understand why the wrong answers are wrong. That's going to make us better at the exam. So A looks good, let's keep reading. B, tolerating eating fruits and vegetables. Now you could argue what's more important, independently picking out clothes or tolerating eating fruits and vegetables. Okay, either way, both have some social significance, but they're not exactly the most important things in the world, right? They're not exactly behavioral cusp or pivotal behaviors in the sense of really meaningful, okay? So decent answer so far. Can we find a better one? What about C, reading simple text? Reading simple text is going to change the client's life and be more meaningful in so many more ways than picking out clothes or eating fruits and vegetables. Reading simple text opens up the world to a whole slew of reinforcement and possibility. Okay, so C is by far our most appropriate target so far. What about D? Learning to drink through a straw. Sure, a valuable skill, okay, but it's not going to be more appropriate, more significant, or more meaningful than reading simple text. Remember, when we mean appropriate, when we say appropriate, we mean meaningful, we mean socially valid. We are targeting socially valid behaviors. That's what we're doing, okay? Always pick the one that's going to be most meaningful to the client and to the stakeholder. A differential reinforcement of other behaviors procedure would be least appropriate to use under which of the following circumstances? Okay, what is a differential reinforcement of other behaviors procedure? Of course, we are reinforcing in the absence of a behavior. We're not necessarily teaching a replacement behavior. We're just reinforcing when a behavior isn't occurring. When would we use a strategy like this? When would we go as far to say, hey, we're not even worried about teaching a replacement right now. We just want that behavior to stop. When would it be least appropriate to use that? A, the behavior occurs at a very high rate. If the behavior occurs at a very high rate, there's a good chance we need to reduce that rate. And this is going to give us, hopefully, opportunities to catch them not engaging in that behavior. So A would be appropriate to use a DRO procedure, okay? This behavior is happening so frequently that all we're worried about is reducing it, okay? We're not worried about the replacement yet. We just want to start reducing this behavior. B, the behavior occurs at a very low rate. Well, if the behavior is occurring at such a low rate that it's hard to ever catch them actually doing it, or that it's not an issue, DRO might not be appropriate, okay? DRO is really good for high rate behaviors. Or C, the learner does not possess many skills in their repertoire, because remember, when we teach a replacement behavior, that replacement behavior already needs to be in the client's repertoire. So if you're working with a very young client or a very unskilled client, there might not be many replacement behaviors to use yet, but you still want to reduce the behavior, so you can use a DRO to at least reduce the behavior while you teach skills. So C would be appropriate. And then D, the behavior is dangerous. If that behavior is dangerous, if it's high risk, if it's high priority, and you don't have time yet to worry about teaching other behaviors, you just need to reduce it as quickly as possible, then a DRO is appropriate. If the behavior occurs at a very low rate, you might go a different direction. A DRO is not necessarily the most appropriate way to target a low rate behavior. So our answer here is B. Greg constantly thinks that others are out to get him. Yesterday at Starbucks, he told the barista his name and placed his order. When he received his cup of coffee, that barista had written Meg instead of Greg on his cup. Greg thinks this was intentional, but his friend says it was most likely just a misunderstanding. Greg's friend is adhering to what dimension of ABA? Dimension questions. Make sure you read them carefully and make sure you actually understand what we're looking at in the question. Dimension questions can get tricky, especially on the exam, okay? Sometimes they're going to be more complicated than this, right? They really want to know you understand our priorities here in ABA. So in this question, we're looking at Greg's friend's behavior, okay? We're not necessarily worried about Greg's behavior. What is Greg's friend doing? Greg's friend is saying, yes, maybe the barista hates you. Yes, maybe the barista's intentionally changing your name to mess with you, but most likely it's just a simple misunderstanding. What are they doing? Well, let's look at A, parsimony. What does parsimony say? Parsimony says the simplest explanation is typically the right explanation. In this case, Greg's friend is saying, look, it's probably just a misunderstanding. It's probably nothing more to it. That's the simplest explanation. Greg's friend is adhering to parsimony. A looks like our best answer. Let's read all of our answer choices, okay? Don't be in a hurry. You can't get fast by practicing fast. You get fast, okay, by going slow and being accurate. Accurate increases speed. There's no point in reading quickly and going quickly if you're missing everything. When you're practicing, you want to try to get every single question right. If you spend 30 minutes on one question, that's fine if you get it right. The more accurate you become, the faster you become. So B, determinism. Determinism says behavior happens for a reason. The universe is lawful. Are we necessarily identifying the reason the behavior occurred? No, we're not really looking at our antecedents and consequences here, okay? We're just simply saying, look, the simplest explanation is the reason, okay, they wrote your name on the cup. It's not a determinism thing. We're not arguing whether or not this behavior is lawful, okay? We're just saying it's a simple explanation. So parsimony is still better than determinism here. Philosophical doubt. Doubt theories, doubt findings, doubt studies. Are we doubting any past findings, any past research, any past outcomes? No. Okay, again, we're just saying the simplest explanation here is the most likely occurrence. So still, parsimony is our best. And then empiricism, okay, objective observation, right? Again, we didn't observe necessarily them writing Meg to determine why this occurred. We're just going with the simplest explanation given no other information. So A is going to be our best answer. Parsimony. Greg's friend is adhering to parsimony. Athena loves to dance. She will start dancing whenever music comes on, regardless if it's country, hip hop, or pop. These different types of music represent a what? Some questions you'll be able to predict your answers before you get there. This one's a little more vague, right? This could be a variety of different things. So let's get to our answer choices and try to start narrowing it down. So these different types of music represent a what? We know the antecedent is the music, and then Athena loves to dance. So we can eliminate what? We can eliminate C, consequence. The music isn't a consequence, right? It's an antecedent. The response class, or the response, is Athena dancing. We're talking about the music. We're talking about the stimuli. So we can eliminate D. That leaves us with A and B, a formal stimulus class or a functional stimulus class. What's the difference? Formal stimulus class, they all look the same or they have some similarity, right? We're not worried about the function. We're not worried about the effect on behavior with formal stimulus class. The functional stimulus class, right? It all has the same effect on behavior. And in this case, all these different types of music, okay, which don't necessarily sound the same, all have the same impact on Athena. and make her dance. These different types of music represent a what? Well, clearly represent a functional stimulus class. I think stimulus class and response class are things that I don't know if we talk about them a lot, and I think people make them trickier than they are. Okay, I would spend a little extra time just hammering home response class and stimulus class and the different types. Just when you get a question, you should get these questions right on the exam. Okay, you don't want to make a silly mistake. So again, don't overthink them. Right, very straightforward. Okay, you know what formal is, you know what functional is. Don't overthink these stimulus and response class questions. Dallas Cowboys suffered another embarrassing playoff loss last weekend. The Cowboys now have gone several years without making a Super Bowl. If you wanted to collect data on how many years since the Cowboys made the Super Bowl, what data collection method would be best? Had to get a little dig at the Cowboys. I put this in my RBT questions as well this week. So what are we looking at? We are looking at the number of years the Cowboys have gone without making a Super Bowl. Okay. When we're picking data collection types, right, or data collection systems, okay, you want to try to use a simple data collection system. We don't want to overcomplicate data collection. Okay, don't make data collection harder than it is. So let's identify first, are we measuring an amount of something, a number of something, or are we measuring some sort of time? Well, be careful here, okay? Yes, you can look at years as time, but what are we looking at? We're looking at the number of years, okay? So we're looking at the amount of years. We can immediately eliminate latency and duration because those have to do with the passage of time, okay? We're looking at the number of years. So are we going to use rate or frequency? Well, there's no need to use rate, okay, because rate is frequency with the time component added, and we're not looking at the rate, okay? We're simply looking at a count. You're just counting how many years since the Cowboys made the Super Bowl, okay? Simple measurement question, okay? Don't overthink them. Again, all we want to know is how many years has it been, how many, count, frequency. Samantha runs her own ABA clinic. She is the only BCBA that works there. She receives a referral one day for a new client. When she interviews the parents of the new client, they say they need ABA because their son is socially awkward. How should Samantha proceed with this case? All right, interesting question here. Samantha is identifying the needs of the case, whether she should take the case. And throughout the interview, they're saying their son is socially awkward. So how should Samantha go about this? A, begin conducting formal assessments and designing treatment plans. Okay, slow down a little bit, right? What are we looking for when deciding if we need to take the case? We're looking for, does the client actually need it? Are these behaviors socially valid? Are they impactful? Okay, and not just the client is different or quote unquote weird or quote unquote socially awkward. Okay, so socially awkward is not going to be enough, right? We need more than that. That doesn't necessarily constitute the need for behavior analysis. We can't just jump in to treatment planning. So B, assign an RBT to the case, start building rapport with the client. Again, should we even take this case yet? We still need to ask ourselves that. Nothing is indicated other than the son being socially awkward that they actually need ABA, okay? Different doesn't mean we need to change the person, okay? So C, continue asking questions about the behaviors to identify social significance. Yes, this is what we're looking for. From our ethical code, all right, we need to ensure we pick clients who need our services, who actually need these meaningful changes in life, and not just they're different from what we consider the norm. So once Samantha hears socially awkward, she needs to continue questioning until she's able to identify socially significant behaviors. Now, if the son can't make friends, right? He's due to some deficit or skill deficit, that's a different story. But if he's just socially awkward, that's not necessarily enough to constitute ABA. C looks like our best answer. What about D? Establish a social skills group for the new client. Maybe if you take the case on, that would be a good way to go. But before that, do we even need to take the case? Can we justify it? Our answer here is C. Norman has worked with the same client for almost 3 months now. The client's target behavior is duration of crying throughout session. At first, the client would cry for almost 50% of the session based on Norman's data. Norman is now reporting the client cries 20 to 25% of the session. When you collect IOA data, however, you still record 50% of the session. How can you explain this discrepancy? What's occurring here? Norman was taking data on crying and said the client cries half the session. Now Norman says the client only cries about a fourth of the session. When you collect data on crying, you get 50% of the session. So something's changed with Norman's data. How do we explain this? Is it A, treatment drift? Is there any indication that Norman's treatment has changed? Have we talked about the treatment before and after? No, we're looking at the data. We're looking at what we are observing, what we are recording. So there's no indication our treatment's any different. We can eliminate A. B, reactivity. Did Norman react to you being there or someone else being there? No, for all intents and purposes, Norman was taking data typically throughout his session. Okay, reactivity really had nothing to do with it. You were collecting your IOA data, okay, but it wasn't Norman reacting to you. So we're still looking for a good answer. C, invalid data. Is our data invalid? Well, be careful. We want accurate, valid, and reliable data. Valid data says what? Valid data is data that says we record what we mean to record. We're measuring what we mean to measure. Norman is taking valid data. We want to measure crying, and Norman is measuring crying. Okay, so his data is valid. That leaves us with observer drift. What is observer drift? Over time, how we observe, how we measure something tends to drift and change. Norman, maybe he became used to it. Maybe he became lazy. Who knows? But over time, he started drifting from his observation of 50% to 25%. When you came in to collect data, you still saw it was 50%. Now, as the supervisor, you need to go in, provide feedback, and correct Norman's observation. So how can we explain this discrepancy? D, observer drift. You ask your lead RBT to graph some frequency data for you for an upcoming report. The RBT uses a line graph and labels the y-axis sessions and the x-axis frequency of aggression. The data appears to be trending downward with a change in level from baseline to intervention. Did the RBT correctly graph the data? Something should have immediately jumped out at you. Okay, it's just a pretty easy graphing question. What rings alarm bells in your head? Okay, read it again. What jumps out? Let's look at our answer choices. Did the RBT correctly graph the data? A, yes, a line graph is appropriate for graphing frequency. Yes, a line graph is appropriate, but did the RBT actually graph the data correctly? Is everything good in this question? No, something is incorrect in this question. Okay, so the RBT did not correctly graph the data. B, yes, you were able to visually analyze the graph. Maybe you were. It doesn't necessarily mean the graph was correct. Okay, what was incorrect? Well, C, no, the axis labels are incorrect. What's wrong with the axis labels? Well, the RBT labeled the y-axis sessions, so passage of time, and the x-axis frequency of aggression, behavior. Where does behavior go on our line graph, on our axis? Behavior goes on the y-axis, passage of time goes on the x-axis. So the RBT mixed up those labels, okay, which is going to impact what the data looks like. So our answer here is C, the labels are incorrect. What does D say? No, the RBT should have used a different type of graph. Nope, the graph is perfectly okay. They just did not label the axes correctly. Therefore, your data is going to look incorrect on the chart, okay? If you ever assign anyone to graph, make sure you check all these little details, okay? It's important because the data will look different if the axis labels are not correct. Brenda is riding with her parents in her car seat. Each time she sees the sign out the window, she says, stop. Brenda is displaying what? So Brenda is engaging in what? She is seeing multiple signs and saying stop each time. She sees the stop sign, she sees a do not walk sign, she sees a yield sign, stop, 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 stop. Okay. So if we look at A and B, we have stimulus generalization and response generalization. Now, what is our rule here? Well, when we're looking at generalization, stimulus and response, ask yourself how many responses and how many stimuli. If we have one response, multiple stimuli, it's going to be stimulus generalization. If we have multiple responses, One stimulus, it's going to be response generalization. In this case, Brenda has one response, which is stop, across multiple stimuli. Therefore, we are looking at stimulus generalization. A looks like our best answer. Are we looking at maintenance? C, maintenance. Well, we're not sure about her learning history or the teaching history, so we can't say she's maintaining this behavior. And then D, echoics. What is the key with echoics? Echoics are evoked by a verbal SD. Okay, a vocal SD. You're repeating something somebody said vocally. A textual is reading something. So Brenda's actually engaging in a textual. So our answer here is going to be A, stimulus generalization. If you wanted to train and promote generalization, which of the following strategies would be most effective? Very straightforward generalization question. Let's look at A. You should use multiple variations of stimuli when teaching. Absolutely. A would be great to train and promote generalization. Do we stop there? Are we done? Do we pick A and move on? No. We continue reading. We're looking for the best answer. B, you should teach across many different environments. Absolutely. B is also something we should be doing. Using multiple stimuli, multiple environments, encourages and promotes generalization. C, you should encourage other RBTs to ask the client to perform the skill. Yes, right? Across multiple people, multiple places, all will promote generalization. So A, B, and C all look good. D, all the above will be our answer. So this is an easy question, but I'm just trying to reiterate the importance of reading all of the answer choices, not rushing, okay? Making sure you get the correct answer. Okay, hope you enjoyed. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Go to bcbastudy.com for all of our study materials. Questions, comments, leave them below. I'm happy to help. Other than that, keep working hard, keep studying hard. I'll see you soon.